Read the last text. That's what my husband said to me on his birthday. No warning, no explanation. Just a calm smile, like he was handing me something ordinary, like a menu or a receipt or anything that wouldn't quietly destroy a life in seconds. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Let me ask you something. If your partner handed you their phone in the middle of dinner and said that, would you hesitate? Because I did. My name is Lena Carter. I'm 28 years old, and up until that night, I thought I understood exactly who I'd married. We were at this dimly lit restaurant downtown, the kind with soft jazz playing in the background and candles that flickered just enough to make everything feel warm, safe, intimate. It was supposed to be simple. On just a small birthday dinner for Ethan. My husband, 31, confident, charming, the kind of man people trust instantly. At the table, it was just us, my younger sister Maya, and two of Ethan's closest friends from work. Everything looked normal. That's the thing, everything looked perfect. Maya, she's 25, sat across from me, smiling, laughing, playing with the rim of her wine glass. She'd always been the more spontaneous one, the fun one, the kind of person who could walk into a room and somehow become the center of it without trying. And I loved that about her. I trusted that about her. But that night, something felt off. Not obvious. Not dramatic. Just wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Have you ever felt that? Like your instincts are whispering something but you don't have proof. So you ignore it? And Ethan kept checking his phone. Not obsessively, just enough for me to notice. Maya laughed a little too hard at one of his jokes. He poured her wine before he poured mine. Small things, tiny things, but they stacked. And then there were these moments, brief ones, where the conversation would dip just for a second and Ethan and Maya would go quiet at the same time. Like they were both aware of something the rest of us weren't. I remember thinking, you're imagining it, don't be that person. So I smiled. I played along. I told myself everything was fine. Because what's the alternative? That your husband and your sister, two of the people you trust most, are somehow connected in a way you don't understand? No, that's ridiculous. Right? The cake came out about an hour in, chocolate, Ethan's favorite. We sang. And everyone clapped. He made a little joke about getting older, about how he still felt 25, the usual. And then he stood up, just slightly, enough to get our attention. He raised his glass and looked at me. Not casually, intentionally. Thanks for everything you do, Lena, he said. Simple words, but his tone. It felt heavier than it should have been, like there was something underneath it, something unsaid. I smiled back, but my chest felt tight. Then he sat down, reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and without hesitation, he slid it across the table toward me, right in front of everyone. Read the last text. Just like that. No explanation, no context. And suddenly the entire table felt quieter, not silent. People were still moving, still talking somewhere in the background. But for me, everything narrowed to that phone sitting inches from my hand. I didn't touch it right away. I looked at him first. He was smiling, not nervously, not guiltily, calm, steady, like he'd already accepted whatever was about to happen. And that's what scared me the most. Because people who are hiding something, they usually panic, they deflect, they stall. Ethan didn't. He offered it. So I reached for the phone. Slowly, my fingers felt heavier than they should have. And the second I tilted the screen toward me, I saw the name. At the top of the message, before I even opened it, before I read a single word. Just the name. Maya, my sister. And right then, before I even tapped the screen, my stomach dropped so hard it felt like my body already knew the truth. Even if my mind wasn't ready to accept it yet, Maya, just her name. That was all it took. I hadn't even opened the message yet, and somehow, everything inside me shifted. You know that feeling? When your body reacts before your brain can catch up? When something deep in your gut just knows? Yeah, that. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. My chest tightened. My mouth went dry. And still, I tried to rationalize it. It could be anything. Maybe she texted him about the party. Maybe it's harmless. But then another thought slipped in. Quieter, colder. Then why is your name not at the top of his messages? I swallowed. Slowly, I tapped the screen. The message opened. At first, my eyes didn't even process the words. They just scanned shapes, letters, lines. Then it clicked. I can't keep pretending. She deserves to know. Tonight, I blinked. Once, twice. I read it again. Same words, same meaning. No misunderstanding. No hidden context that could magically make this okay. My fingers tightened around the phone. I felt like the floor had shifted slightly beneath me, like something stable had just slipped. But here's the strange part. I didn't react. Not immediately. No gasp, no scene, no dramatic outburst, just silence. Because when something hits that hard, sometimes your brain just stalls. I lifted my eyes. Ethan was watching me. Not anxiously, not defensively, just watching. Like he was waiting for a reaction he had already prepared himself for. And that calm, it made everything worse. Because now I knew this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. I shifted my gaze to Maya. She wasn't looking at me, and her eyes were locked on her glass, her fingers lightly gripping the stem. Her jaw was tense, like she was holding something back. Not shock, not confusion, guilt. And just like that, something inside me cracked. But still, I needed more. Because one message, it's bad. But it's not the whole story, not yet. So I scrolled, and that's when I saw it. The conversation didn't start today. It didn't start yesterday. There were messages stacked above it, dozens of them, maybe more. My breath caught. Have you ever gone looking for clarity and instantly regretted it? Because that's exactly what this felt like. Every instinct in me said, stop, put the phone down, walk away, pretend you never saw it. But I couldn't. I needed to know how deep this went. How long? How far? My thumb moved again. Slow, mechanical. My mind opened another message, then another, and another, each one pulling me deeper into something I wasn't prepared to face. At the table, nothing had changed. Ethan's friends were still talking. Something about work, about a client, about numbers I couldn't even begin to process right now. The waiter passed by. Someone laughed. Glasses clinked, and I sat there, silently unraveling, piece by piece, right in the middle of a birthday dinner that was never really about celebrating anything. It was about this moment, this reveal. And suddenly, Ethan's words echoed in my head again. Read the last text. Not a text, the last one. Like it was the final piece of something already built, already finished, already decided. My grip on the phone tightened. My heart was pounding now, louder, faster. And I realized something that made my stomach turn even more. This wasn't just about what I had already seen. It was about what I was about to see. Because if that last message said, she deserves to know, tonight, then everything before it, that was the truth they'd been hiding, and I was holding all of it in my hands. I took a breath, a shaky one, and started scrolling up. I shouldn't have kept scrolling, but I did. Because at that point, stopping wouldn't protect me, it would just delay the inevitable. And deep down, I think I already knew. Whatever I was about to read wasn't going to be small. It wasn't going to be something I could brush off or explain away. It was going to change everything. The first few messages weren't obvious. That's what made it worse. They looked normal, casual. Maya asking, "Hi, did you get home okay?" Ethan replying, "Yeah, thanks for tonight." In isolation, nothing. But stacked together, there was a tone, a familiarity that didn't belong to them. Not like this, not behind my back. I scrolled further. The timestamps jumped back days, then weeks, late-night conversations, inside jokes I didn't recognize, little check-ins that felt too personal. And then, one message hit harder than the rest. Maya, she doesn't see you the way I do. My chest tightened. I read it again, slowly, carefully, like maybe I'd misunderstood it the first time. I hadn't. And Ethan's reply? It's complicated, complicated. That word echoed in my head like it meant something bigger than just the two of them. Because it did. It meant me. It meant our marriage. It meant everything I thought was stable. Wasn't. And I felt heat rise in my face. My fingers started to tremble, but I kept going. Because now it wasn't just curiosity. It was confirmation. I needed to see how far this had gone. Another scroll. Another message. Maya. I hate pretending around her. My stomach dropped. Pretending. Around me. Like I was some outsider in my own life. Like I was the one in the way. I could feel something building in my chest now. Not just pain. Something sharper. Something colder. I glanced up again. Ethan hadn't moved. Still watching me. Still calm. And that calmness, it started to feel less like confidence and more like control. Like he had already rehearsed this moment. Like he knew exactly what I would find and exactly how I'd react. That realization sent a chill through me because it meant this wasn't slipping out and this was being revealed. On his terms, at his timing. I shifted slightly in my seat, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt sitting there, holding his phone like it was evidence of something I wasn't ready to prove. Across from me, Maya finally moved, just slightly. Her eyes flickered up toward me for a split second, and then away. That was all I needed. No denial, no confusion, no, what are you looking at? Just silence. Heavy, guilty, confirming. I looked back down at the screen and kept scrolling. The tone of the messages started to change, slowly at first, then unmistakably. The distance between them, whatever line they might have once respected, it started to blur. Compliments became more personal, conversations became more frequent, longer, deeper, and then one message made my breath catch completely. Maya. I wish things were different. Ethan. Me too. That was it. No emojis, no extra words, just that. Simple, clear, final. I felt something inside me shift right then. Not break, not yet, but realign. Like my mind was finally catching up to what my body had known the moment I saw her name on that screen. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't one bad decision. This was something that had been growing. Quietly. Deliberately. Right in front of me. And I hadn't seen it. Or maybe I hadn't wanted to. My grip on the phone tightened. My heart was pounding so hard now I could hear it in my ears. And still, I hadn't reached the worst part yet, because as I scrolled further up, I noticed something that made my entire body go cold. The messages didn't just go back weeks, they went back months. And whatever I thought this was, it was bigger. Much bigger. The first message wasn't the worst one, not even close. By the time I realized that, it was already too late to stop. I was deep in it now. Scrolling felt automatic, like my body had taken over and my mind was just trying to keep up. And the further back I went, the clearer the pattern became. This didn't start as something physical. That's what made it so much worse. It started emotionally. Quietly. Maya checking in on him. Ethan opening up to her. Conversations that should have belonged to me. Somehow rerouted to her. Maya. You don't talk to her about this stuff? Ethan. It's not the same. I felt that one. Like a direct hit. Because I did talk to him. Or at least, I thought I did. But now? Well, now it felt like there had been this entire second version of him. One I never got to see. And Maya knew that version better than I did. I scrolled faster. Almost like I was chasing the moment it crossed the line. Because there's always a moment, right? A point where it stops being just talking and becomes something else. I found it. Buried between normal messages. Easy to miss if you weren't looking closely. Maya. I shouldn't have stayed that long. Ethan. I didn't want you to leave. My breath caught. That was it. That shift. Subtle but undeniable. From there, everything escalated. The messages got more frequent, more direct, more dangerous. Late night timestamps. 1:12 a.m., 2:03 a.m., 2:47 a.m. While I was asleep in the next room, or thinking he was working late, or believing whatever explanation he gave me at the time. They were talking, building something, behind my back. I felt nauseous, but I kept going, because now I needed to know the full truth. Not pieces, not hints, everything. And then I saw the message that changed everything. Maya. Last night meant more than I expected. I froze, completely. My eyes locked onto the timestamp. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. I searched my memory. That night? Where was I? And then it hit me. I had stayed late at work, a deadline, a client project that ran over. I remember texting Ethan, "Don't wait up. I'll be late." And he replied, "No worries. Take your time." I thought he was home, alone, waiting for me. But he wasn't. He was with her. My grip on the phone tightened so hard my knuckles turned white. And suddenly, everything connected. Every late night, every weird moment, every feeling I pushed aside. It all aligned into something I couldn't deny anymore. This wasn't emotional anymore. This was real, physical, deliberate, repeated. A relationship, right under my nose. My vision blurred slightly, not from tears, those hadn't come yet, but from the sheer overload of it all hitting at once. And the worst part? I was still sitting there, at the table, in public, surrounded by people who had no idea my entire life had just collapsed in complete silence. I slowly lifted my head. Ethan was still watching me, waiting. Maya. She looked up this time. Our eyes met. And in that moment, she didn't deny it. She didn't shake her head. She didn't mouth, "It's not what you think." She just looked at me, and then looked away. That was enough. That was everything. I stood up so suddenly my chair scraped loudly against the floor. The conversation around us stuttered, paused. I didn't care. I reached for Ethan's arm, firm, not aggressive, but final. "Come with me." My voice was low, controlled. But there was no room for argument. He stood up without resisting. Of course he did. Because this was part of the plan, wasn't it? I turned slightly toward him, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my own words. "We need to talk." A beat, and then, sharper. "Now." And as I pulled him away from the table, I didn't look back at Maya. Because I already knew. If I did, I wouldn't be able to hold it together. He didn't even try to lie. That's the part that stayed with me the most. Not the messages, not the timing, not even the fact that it was my sister. It was the way he looked at me and didn't deny a single thing. We stepped outside the restaurant, the cold air hitting my face like a shock to the system. The noise from inside dulled instantly, replaced by this heavy, suffocating quiet. For a second, neither of us spoke. I was still holding his phone, still gripping it like it might somehow anchor me to something real. I turned to him. "Say it," I said, my voice tighter now. "Tell me I'm wrong." There it was. One chance, one opening. All he had to do was take it. Confusion, denial, anger, anything. Instead, he exhaled, slow, measured, and shook his head. "I can't do that." Something in my chest cracked, not shattered, just split, clean, final. "You can't?" I repeated, almost laughing, but there was nothing funny about it. "No," he said, "because you're not wrong." There it was. No hesitation, no scrambling, just truth, offered like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. I stared at him, searching his face for something. Guilt, regret, panic, anything that matched the chaos building inside me. But Ethan? He looked relieved, like the hardest part for him was over. And that realization? That hurt more than the betrayal itself. "Since when?" I asked. "Lena, since when?" I repeated, sharper now. He hesitated. Not to lie, just to calculate. "A few months," he said finally. A few months. Like that made it smaller. Like that made it easier to swallow. I let out a short breath, shaking my head slightly. "A few months," I echoed. "That's what you're going with?" Before he could answer, the restaurant door opened behind us. And I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Maya, of course. Footsteps approached slowly, carefully, like she was stepping into something fragile. "Lena," her voice came, soft, uncertain. I closed my eyes for half a second. Just one. Then I turned. There she was, my sister, looking exactly the same as she had an hour ago and completely different at the same time. Her eyes were glossy, her hands clasped together tightly in front of her. But she didn't look confused. She didn't look shocked. She looked exposed, like the secret she'd been carrying had finally been dragged into the light. How long? I asked her. No anger in my tone now, just clarity. She swallowed. About 4 months. 4, not 3, not a few. 4. I nodded slowly, processing, adjusting, rewriting everything I thought I knew about the past half year of my life. And you were both just going to. What? I asked, glancing between them. Tell me tonight like it's some kind of announcement? Ethan spoke. That was the plan, yeah. The plan. I let out a quiet, disbelieving breath. You planned this, I said. This whole thing, the dinner, the phone, the message. We didn't want to keep lying, Maya said quickly. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see my sister. I saw someone who had made a choice. Repeatedly, deliberately. You didn't want to keep lying, I repeated. So you decided to control how I found out. Neither of them responded. Because they couldn't. Because it was true. I took a step back, away from both of them, creating space. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. Like I was already starting to detach from whatever this used to be. I looked at Ethan, then at Maya, and asked the only question that mattered now. So what now? And for the first time that night, neither of them had an answer. So what now? I asked the question, but the truth is, I already knew the answer. There was no version of this where we went back to normal. No version where this became a rough patch we worked through. No version where I sat back down at that table, smiled, and pretended my life hadn't just split into a before and after. They didn't answer me. Ethan looked at the ground. Maya's eyes filled, but she stayed quiet. And in that silence, everything became clear. It didn't start the way I imagined betrayal would. There was no dramatic moment at first, no single decision. It built slowly. 6 months ago, Maya had moved closer after her breakup. She was fragile, or at least that's how it seemed. I encouraged Ethan to help her, rides, job advice, emotional support. I trusted both of them. That was the foundation. 5 months ago, they started spending more time together. At first, it was practical. Then it became routine. 4 months ago, it shifted. They started confiding in each other. About stress, about life, about me. That part mattered. Because somewhere in those conversations, I stopped being a person and started becoming a topic. 3 months ago, the line blurred. And that message, I didn't want you to leave. That wasn't hypothetical. That was real. That was the first moment they both recognized what was happening and didn't stop it. 2 months ago, it became physical. Not once, not accidental, repeated, planned, coordinated around my schedule, deleted messages, hidden time, carefully constructed normalcy. And tonight? Tonight was never about honesty. It was about control. They had decided they were done hiding, but they still wanted to choose the moment, the setting, the narrative, the phone, the message. Read the last text. They didn't confess. They staged it. And I was supposed to. What? Appreciate the honesty, understand, accept it? No. I looked at them both, really looked this time, and something inside me settled. Not healed, not okay, but steady. That you don't get to do this on your terms, I said quietly. My voice wasn't shaking anymore. You don't get to decide when I find out, how I react, or what happens next. Maya opened her mouth. Lena, I'm so. No, I cut in. Not loudly, but final. You don't get to be sorry and selfish at the same time. She stopped. Ethan stepped forward slightly. Lena, we were going to tell you. And that makes it better? I asked, looking at him directly. You think handing me your phone in a restaurant makes this honest? He didn't answer, because there was no version of this where he sounded right. I let out a breath, slow, controlled, and then something unexpected happened. I laughed, just once, short, quiet. Not because anything was funny, but because the situation was so completely unreal. It almost felt scripted. You plan to reveal, I said. Like this was some kind of story you could manage. Neither of them spoke. And in that moment, I was done. Not angry in the explosive sense, not screaming, just finished. I didn't go back inside. I didn't say goodbye to anyone at the table. I handed Ethan his phone back, and I left. That was it. No dramatic exit, no final speech, just a decision. That night, I checked into a hotel. I turned my phone off, and for the first time in hours, I allowed myself to feel it. Everything, the betrayal, the humiliation, the anger, the grief. Not just for my marriage, but for my sister. Because losing one would have been devastating. Losing both? That was something else entirely. The next few days were quiet, intentionally. I didn't respond to calls, didn't engage with messages. And I needed space to think without their voices shaping the narrative. Then I acted. I filed for separation within the week. Not impulsively, clearly, deliberately. The apartment, I left it. Too many memories, too many lies woven into everyday spaces. Family found out quickly. There was no containing something like this. And the fallout? It spread. Some relatives tried to stay neutral, some didn't. My parents were divided in their own way, not in loyalty, but in how to handle it, because this wasn't just a marriage breaking. This was a family fracture. Maya reached out multiple times, messages, calls, emails, apologies, explanations. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't read them, but because there was nothing left to say. Ethan, his life didn't collapse overnight, not externally. He kept his job. He maintained his routine. But socially, things shifted. People knew, and even when they didn't say it, they knew. That kind of thing follows you, quietly, consistently. And their relationship? Yes, they stayed together, at first, but something had changed. Because what they built in secrecy didn't hold the same weight in reality. Without the hiding, without the tension, without the illusion, they had to face what was actually there. And over time, it cracked. Arguments, resentment, blame, because relationships built on betrayal don't escape it. They carry it. Eventually, they ended too. A year later, my life looked completely different. New apartment, new routines, therapy, space, clarity, not perfect, but real. I wasn't the same person who sat at that table anymore, and I didn't want to be. One evening, I was sitting by the window, my laptop open, work half finished. My phone buzzed. A message. I glanced at the screen. Maya. Just her name. No heart, no label, just Maya. I stared at it for a moment, thought about everything. The dinner, the messages, the silence, the aftermath. And then I picked up my phone, opened the notification, hovered for a second, and deleted it. Unread. Not out of anger, not out of pain, but out of clarity. Some doors don't need closure. They just need to stay closed. I set my phone down, looked out the window, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt quiet. Not empty, not heavy, just steady. That night didn't just show me who they were. It showed me exactly where I needed to stop and where I needed to start.